Good afternoon, everybody. Uh, Hope you're all well, whatever time of the day it is, and wherever you are in the world. I wanted to just make a short video and to pay tribute to another sad loss in the music world, the classic rock and pop music world. Uh, the sad passing away of Ronnie Spector a few days ago. So the Ronettes and Ronnie were hugely successful in the early 60s, hugely influential. And whilst, I could never claim to be an expert or an enormous fan of the Ronettes and other girl bands of the time, certainly their music has infused and influenced, and I've heard it often enough to have it had an impact on me and many others, many millions of others. It's always been there. It's a mainstay of radio. Our songs a mainstay of radio growing up. Jukeboxes, dances, and movies. Um, and I did want to talk a little bit. I mean, Ronnie and the Ronettes and other, they've got a lot of die-hard fans, and I've no doubt they're going to make videos which are far more knowledgeable than me about her life and her career, in particular the later years when she had a revival with working with Eddie Money and Bruce Springsteen and others. I really wanted to focus more on the influence of the Ronettes and indeed some of her the other so-called girl bands of the time, because it's far more influential. They were far more influential than many of us may remember today, and many modern younger music listeners might realize. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. So first of all, I'd like to offer my condolences to her family and all her fans and music lovers everywhere who were into Ronnie and the Ronettes. Um, so just to touch briefly on the details, this is an article from Metro on Wednesday. Ronette star Ronnie Spector dies aged 78 after a brief battle with cancer, and let's hope it was brief and that she did not suffer too much. Ronette star Ronnie Spector has died at the age of 78, so, not young but not old either. It's a sad loss. Legendary singer who formed the girl group in 1957 died following a brief battle with cancer, with the star's family sharing a heartfelt statement. They wrote, "Our beloved Earth Angel Ronnie peacefully left this world today after a brief battle with cancer. She was with family and in the arms of her husband, Jonathan Greenfield. Ronnie lived her life with a twinkle in her eye, a spunky attitude, a wicked sense of humour, and a smile on her face, and she was filled with love and gratitude. Her joyful sound, playful nature, and magical presence will live on in all who knew, heard, or saw her." And in lieu of flowers, Ronnie requested that donations be made to your local women's shelter or to the American Indian College Fund. Now, there's a lot of. It's true, whenever I saw film of her performing, pictures of her with others or on her own, she always seemed to be a genuinely positive presence, always smiling. I don't recall ever reading a bad word about her or anyone saying anything bad about her. And, she seemed to be a genuinely positive, happy, and wonderful person. So it's a sad loss in that respect. Um, so I found this picture of her with her husband Phil Spector, obviously a large component of the sound of those days, the Phil Spector sound, and obviously she had some very troubling times with him, and he is where he is today. Um, and many people cite the influence of Phil Spector because of his production sound in making many of those records of that time successful. But let's not forget that the music couldn't have existed without the singer and Ronnie, who formed the Ronettes with her sister Estelle, cousin. Nedra. They were fantastic singers. Ronnie had a beautiful, kind of almost ballsy sound. I mean, it's a strange thing to say about a female singer. She had a absolutely, despite that wall of sound that Spector created behind her, the vocal was absolutely front and center, and in totally in no way overwhelmed by that sound and dominated it. So with the producer couldn't exist without the artist, and she was an extremely fine singer. So if you listen back to hits like "Be My Baby" and "Walking in the Sand," uh, sorry, "Walking in the Rain." Um, Almost confused that with "Remember Walking in the Sand." Different girl group. "Baby, I Love You." Absolutely phenomenal lead vocal and beautiful sound. So, um, yeah. So when you look back to those days, we tend to forget how successful and popular those girl vocal groups were. You had the Shirelles, the Marvelettes, Martha and the Vandellas, obviously the Supremes over at Motown, who could be considered huge rivals of the Ronettes, and the Ronettes themselves. These groups, particularly in the era pre Beatles, dominated the pop charts transatlantically and were immensely popular. In a sense, they kept rock and roll and pop music going in that period where the original artists like Elvis was in the army, Buddy Holly had died, Jerry Lee and others were struggling because of personal issues. Pre British invasion, these guys were the ones that really kept it going and made sure that pop and rock, modern pop music and rock music didn't die or wasn't appropriated by the studios and turned back into crooners and so on. And their influence on the coming beat beat scene was incalculable. Guys like Brian Wilson, groups like the Beach Boys, absolutely cited their influence as a huge component of their sound, and Brian Wilson particularly absolutely adored the Ronettes. They were an integral part of that scene and appearing on all these top pop shows in the US and then the UK. And their influence on the British beat invasion was also incalculable. So the Rolling Stones actually supported the Ronettes on a UK tour, and which is I think a little indication of the relative status of the groups at that time. And regularly in UK music polls of the time, NME Music Awards and so on, the Ronettes were consistently voted up there alongside the Stones and the Beatles as the favourite act at that time, often surpassing those groups in popularity. So like, hugely influential. I mean, you only have to look at a picture like this and actually see what a wonderful time they're all having, and just those fantastic smiles on all of them. Even Keith looks cute there. Um, Another great picture I found, of course, is, and apologies for not giving credit to the person who took this. I couldn't find it who it was. This is just such a fantastic image. She just looks like such a great lady, such a thoughtful pose. Absolutely love this one. And they were certainly spent a lot of time with the Beatles too. They supported the Beatles on one of the I think it was the last Beatles US tour, but they'd certainly hung out many times before. There are lots of photos of the Ronettes and the Beatles hanging out in within nightclubs and studios. Uh, and the Beatles, although they never covered any Ronette songs, they did cover some girl band sounds. I don't think they actually ever did a Ronette song. We're hugely into that. I think more so than the Beatles were never a band that were hugely influenced by the blues or hard blues stuff. They much preferred the Spector, the Motown, the pop R&B sound, and Ronettes were a huge part of that. So they were extremely excited to hang out with him. I think there was one particular night that they were dancing somewhere, and there's pictures of Paul and George and so on. Having a fairly good night with the girls. So, uh, so yeah, their influence was enormous. Their sound was timeless. Those records are still played today. Future stars like Bruce Springsteen, have also attributed a large component of their influence and sound to those Ronettes records. So yeah, sad loss indeed. But yeah, I just wanted to pay tribute to their their influence. It's way greater than people may imagine in the current day and age. The template that they created for future vocal groups is still one that's emulated, imitated today, although many oftentimes by people with way less talent. But that's a template that worked, that people still like to see, those vocal groups. Um, so, sad loss. Thank you, Ronnie, for all the music and everything you contributed to culture and the world. Uh, we appreciate it very much. So may you rest in peace. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this short tribute. I really appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you all keep on rocking. Until next time, take care.